everybody, to the Value Add Strategy Podcast. I'm joined today by Patrick Lonergan, who's joining us from Vital Wealth Strategies. Patrick,
Yeah.
thanks for being on the show.
Matt, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation. There's things that I love. It's real estate. That's probably my first love. Dropped out of law school. I was late for my very first class buying a piece of real estate. And then looking forward to getting into some tax strategy and how people can pay a little less tax. So it'll be fun.
Well, I think everybody loves that, paying a little less tax. And I know you've kind of devised some really interesting strategies that I want to jump into around the captive insurance play that you have and
Yeah.
some of the cost segs and what you've done to save your clients hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of taxes on an annual basis. But before we do that, I'd love to let the audience know a little bit more about yourself, kind of your
Mhm.
background, how you got started in this industry, where you're from originally. And yeah, if you could enlighten us with that, I think that'd be a great start.
So I'm from Clinton, Iowa, and my
Okay.
wife and I are high school sweethearts. We vowed we would never move back to Clinton, Iowa, and I currently live in Clinton, Iowa. So
Nice.
yeah, it's amazing how I have my plans, and the Lord's like, hey, those are really cute, but we're going to do something different here. So we live in Clinton, Iowa. My wife owns and operates a senior housing management company. They just acquired some properties this month, and I think it pushes them over 700 employees. They've got a
Wow.
dozen different locations. So that's a complexity that I don't like in my life. She's operationally brilliant, and it's like I'm happy with my 7 employees and the contractors we work with. It seems like it's enough for me. But I alluded to this. We bought some real estate right after we got married, a 5-unit apartment building. I got a full ride to law school. I was late for my very first class on the very first day, closing on a single family home. And that foreshadowed where I was going with real estate. All of the attorneys that I knew didn't like being attorneys. And I'm like, but it was free. So I was like, well, I better go. Before midterms, I dropped out and we started building the real estate portfolio. Fast forward 2008, 9, 10, real estate market fell apart. My job was to go find the deal, raise the money. My wife was the operator. And so there wasn't many deals to be had, wasn't many people interested in investing in real estate. And so I had some friends that were in we'll call it financial advisory space. And I had financial advisors come talk to me as an entrepreneur, and they didn't understand me. I had my investments. I didn't need the stock and bond portfolio. We were putting our money into real estate, and it was working until it wasn't. But so I needed help with like liquidity and tax strategy and all those other things that they didn't have any solutions for. And so I got into the industry at that point. I'm like, okay, there's some opportunity here to show up and serve the entrepreneur. Who doesn't want to pay less tax? That's sort of number one. And then number two is entrepreneurs have more ideas than they have time and money to execute on. And I'm stealing that from a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, Wes Young, that helped me in the business. But and that's true. And I remember putting every single dollar into a real estate deal and be like, honey, we're gonna have to wait a week to buy groceries because we're that poor right now. So that's not a healthy place to live. The number one reason businesses owners go out of business is they run out of cash. So it's like, let's protect liquidity, let's pay less tax, and let's figure out how to accelerate our wealth. So that's really what we've built our practice around. We started that at the end of 2009. So we've been doing this for a little over 16 years, and it's been a fun adventure. Right now, we save on average our clients over $300,000 a year in income tax. We
Wow.
also do some work on the capital gains tax side too, but the income tax shows up every year. So we help our clients save money there.
Well, I could tell you from what you just said, it sounds like you're willing to go all in when you're in that position where you
Mhm.
put every last dime into a real estate deal and you didn't know where you were going to buy groceries. Here, the reason why we started the Value Add Strategy podcast, we really wanted to inspire
Mhm.
entrepreneurs to live their dream and to never give up and not to
Mhm.
be dissuaded by what others tell them they can or they can't do. When you were
Yeah.
in that moment and you were wondering, how am I going to get my next meal? I just put everything into this
Yeah.
deal. Can you kind of give us a glimpse into what was in your mind and more importantly, what gave you the determination to say, hey, let's just keep pushing forward and
Mhm.
inevitably you made this thing work. But
Yeah.
but kind of help us out there.
So I think I'd like to highlight that wasn't a wise thing to do. I've learned through that process, like living on that razor thin margin is not good. And I knew we had rents coming in and positive cash flow coming soon, but it was like it was going to take a minute. And so, but one of the things that really just settled in for me is I wasn't going to go back to law school. And so it was a little bit of like the ships have been burned and I'm going to go make this thing work. And I just believed it
No
was
plan
possible.
B.
Right. There was
I,
no plan B, and I believed it was possible. So it was like, all right, creativity. We're going to figure out how to make this thing work. I really was kind of a real estate entrepreneur. We were figuring out how to make money. We were wholesaling some deals. We were buying and holding. We were, selling things when we had to and enjoyed some appreciation. We forced some appreciation in the opportunity. So it was like, okay, this is so I think that's probably the name of the game. And I'm just persistent. I am just super stubborn. I will just keep working at things, even though it looks dark. It's like, nope, I will just keep going. So I think those things paid off for me.
I think that's the core tenet to a successful entrepreneur,
Mhm.
resiliency, persistence. I mean, I think Elon Musk said it is like, what makes an entrepreneur or what makes a founder? I think he said staring at the abyss while you're chewing on glass. And it's
Yeah.
like, you don't know what's going to happen, but you have to keep grinding and moving forward. And it's not for everybody, but I could tell you, and your story resonates because I've been there.
Mhm.
I've
Yep.
put everything I've had into a real estate deal in the beginning of my career as well. And I'm thinking, boy, if these people don't pay rent next month, I don't know
Hmm.
what I'm going to do. And there's some excitement there, but there's also could be an element of fear. But if
Yeah.
you do believe that you're guided and you don't give up, it's amazing what's possible. And I think you and your story and your wife are a testament to that.
Thank you. Yeah, there's absolutely a faith component, right? Like I've got to have faith that, all of the pieces are going to come together. And even if they don't, I'm going to persevere and figure it out. So yeah, we've been in some of those moments and through those valleys, we've learned a lot. We've learned what to do, what not to do, and found some success along the way.
Well, congratulations to you. You've
Thank you.
had an unbelievable career, and we're thrilled to have you here. So, with that, let's talk about something that you said. You, on
Mhm.
average, save your clients, I think you said about 300,000 a year in tax savings.
Yep.
And I know every client's, if I come to you, it would be
Yep.
different than, some of your other clients because the magical words, it depends, right?
Right.
Everybody's
Yep.
unique, everybody's different, but maybe can you walk us through, without giving names or
Yep.
exact circumstances, how you've saved over
Yep.
$300,000 for one of your clients?
Yeah, yeah. So for us, it all starts off with understanding your goals, like what's important to you personally, what's important to you from a business point of view. Because when we start looking at the number of tax strategies available to us, there's an unlimited number of combinations. We can mix and match them so many different ways. So it starts there, and then we start working through a framework that we've developed. And so level one, we always start with level one. Level one strategies are the IRS gives us guidance, but it doesn't take any investment. This is where I'll call it some tax magic. You can make some of the tax bill go away by using some of these strategies. And a good level one strategy few that we like are home office deduction. Let's just optimize that. The government gives us a $1,500 standard deduction for home office. A lot of our clients have really nice homes. That might be a $5,000 deduction. Once we just itemize everything, use a percentage of our house as home office, let's say it's 10%. Cool. Now I get 5K deduction. Next is the Augusta Rule or venue rental. I can rent my house out for 14 days and I don't have to claim it as income. Now, if I'm an entrepreneur and I have vendors over at my house, employees over, advisors over, and I do that 14 days throughout the year, I don't need to go rent my house out on Airbnb to some stranger. I can rent it out to my business. So I'm moving money from my business pocket to my personal pocket. It's a deduction for the business. But again, I can rent my house out for 14 days and not have to claim it as income. So I'm creating an expense on the business side and not on the personal side as income. So we like those things. Think about my kids. I've got 3 teenagers. My oldest daughter, she's 18. She pays bills, does some bookkeeping for me, opens the mail. My other 2 daughters, we're in about a 15,000 square foot office building. They clean it. And so I can pay them $16,100. And that's the standard deduction amount. It's the 0% tax bracket. If you have kids, kids are expensive. So I'm funding things like, they're paying for their own gas. They're funding their Roth IRAs. They're putting money away in brokerage account, paying for all the things that go on with kids, camps and those types of things. So we think that's another great level one strategy. Level two is the IRS gives us guidance, but now we have to invest dollars. So think 401k, IRAs, cash balance plans. Don't need to spend a ton of time here. These are kind of straight down the middle of the fairway things that we're used to. And you talked
Sure.
about captive insurance. So this is
Yeah.
this is a level three strategy. Level three, we define that as we're combining sections of the tax code to create tax efficiency. And here's what I mean by that. So for my business, all of the insurance premiums I pay are tax deductible. Okay. But as the insurance company, when they receive those premiums, they don't have to claim those as income. Okay. Because there's potential claims out there. It's all built into the tax code. So I can set up what's called a micro captive. 831 is the section of the tax code that outlines how companies are treated. There's definitions of insurance that I have to meet. Okay. So this is not just getting a tax deduction and they go putting a pool in my backyard and buying a boat. Like that does not work. But what I have pooled risk. I'm using a third-party administrator that has a great track record. I'm registered with the State Department of Insurance, and I've got third-party actuaries pricing real insurance policies. So these are generally low probability, high impact claims. Okay. So, cybersecurity, loss of key employee, loss of key client, those are all examples of reputational risk, like Matt, we're on here talking, if somebody slanders you online and it's like, I need to recover my reputation, you can file a claim, hire a PR firm to sort of get those things, corrected. So those are all examples of coverages that can go into a captive. Now, the nice thing about the captive is, like a lot of insurance, like I mentioned, low probability, high impact. I'm pooling these claims with other insurance or other business owners. So it could be 100, 150, 200 other business owners. So if somebody files a big claim, it's a minor impact to me. Generally, the claims are about 3 to 5% of the premiums that I'm paying in. So, and then there's some administrative costs to running the captive. But when I start adding all those costs up, they're just significantly lower than the tax that I would have paid. So, yeah.
So have you set one of these up for yourself in addition to your clients?
Yep. So I personally don't have one. And part of the reason being, right now, owning lots of real estate, my wife's real estate professional, we can offset all of the active income we have in the tax strategy business from all of the phantom losses that are coming through on the acquisitions on the real estate side. So for me, we have a lot of those offsets. I don't need the captive kind of in the middle there. It's a great tool for the insurance piece and the tax piece. But I am able to meet the insurance piece out there in the marketplace, and I don't need it on the tax side. So,
we looked at doing this, and we've got, I don't know, 140 some odd properties plus within our portfolio, and we're paying, several $1 million a year in premiums. I've always been kind of enamored by the insurance industry, and the reason why is I've for a very long time been a Buffett devotee, and I know he built Berkshire off of insurance company float. The idea that these premiums come in, not only are they not taxed on them, but they've got the ability to invest these premiums in stocks, bonds, real estate, and earn a return essentially off of someone else's money, i.e. that float. And that I've always thought, boy, it'd be great to be on the other side of this transaction rather than paying all these fees. I'd love to have access to that capital and have the ability to invest it. So I've always been intrigued by that. What scared me, and maybe you're going to tell me this is unwarranted and I shouldn't be scared. I was always told a couple things. One, this thing had to be like in Bermuda on one side, and then the other part of it is there's a higher level of IRS audit scrutiny that came with this 831B. And for those reasons, I thought, let me, just being more conservative, I didn't know enough. I put it in the too hard pile, essentially, and moved on. So and maybe you could enlighten me.
Yeah, no, these are all really, really good points. So there's a few things to highlight. Generally, the IRS is going to look much closer at what they call offshore captives because there's not the same scrutiny that they would get if it's organized in North Carolina. So the North Carolina Department of Insurance is like paying attention to how this business is being run. Okay.
Is that where you kind of advocate forming these captives, is North Carolina?
Yep. There's a few of the different administrators we work with, and they tend to like North Carolina. They seem to be micro captive friendly. They understand them. And so, so we've got a number of 2 or 3 different third-party administrators we've worked with that have set these captives up. And we've also had clients come to us with bad captive administrators. And I think one thing that you're highlighting is if you Google captive insurance, okay, one of the things that will come up is that it's on the IRS Dirty Dozen list. And the reason being And I haven't got to level 4 tax strategy yet, but level 4 tax strategy is tax fraud. And what I can do is I can take a good tax move, like putting my kids on payroll. If my kids don't actually do any work for me and I'm paying them, that's tax fraud. I shouldn't be doing that. If I put money into a captive insurance company, like I'm taking sections of the code and creating tax efficiency. Now, there's not a lot of oversight. If I decide to take my captive dollars, now the third party administrator should wave a flag and say, don't do that. But if I decide to take those dollars and put a pool in my backyard with pre-tax dollars, it's tax fraud. The IRS should come slap me for that, right? And
Sure.
The problem is people have set up offshore captives. There's not been oversight. And then they've spent the money like it's their personal piggy bank. And so the IRS is like, hey, we don't like this. We're going to take a close look at this. Now, with that being said, we have not had any clients that have been audited because of their captive. We've had clients that are audited for whatever reason, like just get picked out of the sort of random pile. But it's not like, oh, everybody that has a captive is showing up on the audit list. And then the nice thing about the administrators we use, they're the ones defending the captive in the audit. So they're showing up going, here's our third-party actuaries that priced all the coverage. Here's the State Department of Insurance. We're checking all of the boxes to show legitimacy here that this is not just some tax scheme. We are insuring real risks in our businesses, and this is how we got to these figures that we're putting in the captive. So
yeah, do you then set up reinsurance behind it? Because you brought up something interesting. You brought up slander. You brought up cybersecurity issues. I mean, very, very important policies to carry. Perhaps D&O when you have a larger private equity shop. But actual property and casualty, is that something that could be built into these as well? And then do you have a reinsurer that steps in behind it?
Yep. So one of the captive administrators that we use, and I think this should give people confidence, the large insurance companies are getting into the captive insurance space. So Higginbotham, large insurer, they have a captive insurance arm. And so they look at everything you're doing and they're like, okay, let's go find the most efficient way for you to insure your assets. We can either go find commercial insurance, we can find reinsurance in your captive, we can have the pool just take care of the captive claims, depending on, there are some limits that you can run into to the captive pool, and you might need reinsurance. But there's lots of different ways to structure the insurance. And the goal is, what is the most efficient way? What's going to keep our costs the lowest? What's the most tax efficient? What's going to protect us from the risks that are out there as business owners?
Well, we'll have to chat offline. I'm pretty excited about this topic, but I do want to get to some of give us a couple other areas.
Can I list one more idea with the captive? Because I think this is like where tax strategy really comes into play. So some of the large deals we bought, Prudential was our lender. So they're doing exactly what you said Buffett does. So you can do that. You can loan money out for earned premiums. So I can't put dollars in year one and then take them out, right? Because I got potential claims. But dollars that have come into the captive, they're now earned. Now I can make loans I can make loans with those excess dollars. And I can loan money out to a non-insured entity. So if I'm going to spin up an entity to buy my office building for my business, like I can make that loan. Using my example, my wife's a real estate professional. So I'm using pre-tax dollars to buy a piece of property. Then I'm cost segregating the property, creating all sorts of additional loss that gets to flow through to me. So I'm double dipping on the tax side. And when we just look at how to accelerate somebody's wealth, when we can eliminate as much of the tax as possible, it's strategies like that help people just build their wealth up and to the right. So yes, thank you for letting me nerd out on that for a second.
So if you were to lend that money to your wife, there's no inherent conflict there. North Carolina, Department of Insurance wouldn't frown upon that transaction in any way?
No, just as long as that entity is not insured by the captive, it's fine. We can make loans to that new entity. So if it's just going to be a real estate holdco and there's been times where we haven't made that loan because we wanted that insurance or that real estate covered by the captive. But if we don't want that coverage and we are comfortable with it from the marketplace, it's a fantastic strategy.
You brought up another concept I wanted to zoom in on for a moment, if we can. You brought up, back to the example with lending the money to your wife, you brought up a cost segregation study.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that works? Is that something that you and your team do, and why is that important to a real estate professional?
Yeah, thank you. A little bit about our business. We are very broad. We know a lot about a number of different
Okay.
strategies. And when it's time to go do a captive insurance or a cost segregation study, and we don't have a financial interest in any of these, we just go find the best in the nation. Our clients are nationwide, our team's nationwide. We just find the best people to execute on those things. So we've
Okay.
got a couple contacts on the cost segregation side, that some of which have like literally written the book on tangible property regulations, is where cost segregation study falls. And so the cool thing about a cost segregation study, and we'll explain why this makes sense, but if I buy a residential property, I've got 27 and a half years. If I buy a commercial property, I think it's 39, and I could have those numbers slightly off. But I get straight line depreciation. So the building I'm in right now, it's commercial property. Let's say I buy it for $1 million. You subtract out the cost of the ground. Let's say it's 200,000. So I've got an $800,000 building that I can depreciate over 39 years. So I take my 800,000, I divide it by 39, and I get 1/39th of that every single year that I get a write off. My taxes and offset the positive cash flow that building's generating. The reason I'd
Okay.
want to do a cost segregation study is I can take all of that depreciation. So if we think about that dollar that I'm saving in tax 39 years from now, it's not as valuable as a dollar today.
No.
Inflation's going to eat that dollar up. So if I can move as many of those dollars today as I can and offset the income that the property is producing, and if I'm occupying the building, I want to push that market rent up as high as I can possibly justify to have all of that be, again, thinking of tax strategy here, like my business gets a deduction for the rent it pays. And then if I don't have to pay tax on those dollars that flow through my real estate entity because I have all the cost segregation study losses set up there, it works nicely. So the big, beautiful bill gave us the opportunity to accelerate depreciation. So everything with a 15-year life or shorter, I can push into year one, 100%. So it's like I might get 30% of my $800,000 building, so $240,000 that I can shove into year one. Now, I might not have $240,000 of income, but the nice thing is that loss just sits there and all of my passive income flows in and comes to me tax-free, using up that loss. So that's how cost segregation study works without a real estate professional in my life. If I add a real estate professional like my wife, and the rules for that are you have to have a minimum of 750 hours in active real estate, we'll call it management. It can't be as an investor. If I'm running pro formas and I'm talking to bankers, that's investor activity. It needs to be active activity in the real estate game. If I got 750 hours and it's my primary activity. So I can't be working 2,000 hours as a dentist and then try to be a real estate professional. The IRS is going to go, this doesn't work. But then I can use those losses being passive losses. Now they're active, and that can be used to offset W-2 income. It can be offset business profits, things that I have to actively earn. So that can be a tremendous wealth building tool. Again, if I had to design the perfect structure, it would be a real estate professional that's in the game, that is able to create those losses. They're acquiring real estate on a regular basis, and a cash flowing business that's just doing really, really well. And all of those dollars that are coming into the business are tax free.
It's really an amazing strategy. When you talk about building a flywheel or a compounding machine, back to Buffett, I
Yep.
mean, you think about time value of money, back to your example of $800,000, when you could shield the majority of that in the form of an NOL, and then you have ordinary capital gains, you've got
Mhm.
passive income, you got long-term capital gains, and you're essentially offsetting all or a large part of that income
Yep.
every year. So you're not writing a check to the IRS. You've got more capital at your disposal that you could go and
Mhm.
redeploy, reinvest, rinse and repeat, and start
Yep.
that process over and over and over again. It's amazing what you could do.
Yeah, you think about if you take that $300,000 that we save clients and they just put it into the next investment, right? And if we want to compound that, right? They send it to you and it's like, great. They're creating, 80 to 90% losses from the dollars that they're putting into one of the investments you have because of the depreciation that we were just talking about. It's like, what a tremendous wealth building tool. And it's just perpetuating itself. We're able to take these dollars, reinvest them in a tax efficient structure, And then all the income that's coming out to me is again tax efficient. There is no better way to build wealth. There's nothing that erodes wealth like tax. You can look at performance returns. If I get a 7% versus an 8% return, that's okay. But if I save 30, 40% on tax on the dollars that I'm earning, it makes an enormous difference.
Makes all the difference in the world. I mean, when you
Hmm.
start to look at a compounding schedule, you know how compounding works. They say it's
Yeah,
the eighth wonder of the world. Year one, two, three, five, it may not look like much. When you start looking at that at year 30, year
yeah,
20, I mean, it becomes absolutely incredible what you could
yeah,
build if you create a system and you stick to it and you compound your wealth and continually reinvest in the friction of tax isn't slowing that wheel down, you're going to build something tremendous.
yeah, yeah. I think there's a study out there that shows the power of compounding a penny. When you start off with a penny and then you double it every day for 30 days, 31 days, can't remember,
Yep.
and you apply the 37% tax rate to that doubling, I think you have like $15,000 versus $5 million. The difference is unbelievable.
It's
The
incredible.
tax just erodes so much of the wealth. It's amazing.
And what's also amazing about it is the strength and the power of real estate as we have this conversation. I have a lot of colleagues that I know. I'm in various investor networks and they do
Yep.
extremely well in the stock market. I mean, extremely well. But this is a big but. They are not taking advantage of what you and I are talking about right now because they're
Right.
not real estate investors. And to me, it's just crazy not to have a real estate bucket, even if it's not your core competency.
Right. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we like to think about, so I want to pause for a second and just go, let's look at the Forbes list. Name the stock picker that's on the Forbes list. The closest person you can get to is Buffett. Everybody else owns one or both of these things, a business and real estate. Okay. So
Yep.
nobody got there from stock point of view, and there are people there with real estate. So let's just keep that in mind in the big picture. So
Yep.
then the next piece is, why is that the case? Well, there's four sort of wealth building categories with real estate. There's the appreciation. We're used to the price of our homes going up. Okay. There's the depreciation. We just talked about that. I get to offset all of the income coming through the thing tax free, which is amazing.
Yep.
There's loan amortization. Somebody else is helping me build my balance sheet by paying my rent. And when they pay that rent, the loan payment, amortizes itself down. And then the last one's cash flow, probably my
Yep.
favorite on the list. So it's like,
Me too.
and we just talked about how we can do that tax free. And then the other thing about the cash flow, and this is where the operator comes in. And this is where I think when I think about the verticals that you guys have created and the experience you have, when you can drive that cash flow, when I increase the cash flow of an asset, I get a multiple of that increase in cash flow in the return form of appreciation. The
Yep.
value is going up. And so I can force appreciation in an asset. The rest of the market around me might not be appreciating very well. But if I go and I take that cash flow and I fix the operations there, I can create tremendous wealth. And that's where I think most entrepreneurs, we encourage our clients, do not go start a real estate business. I've done it. I've started with single family homes. I've owned a 10-unit apartment building. You literally could not give me a 10-unit apartment building. I wouldn't take it. I'd be like, I don't have time for that thing because there's always a vacant unit. You're always over there. You're mowing the grass. It doesn't generate enough money to have on-site
You have no
management to.
scale. You
Right,
don't have
no
the
scale
scale.
whatsoever. So we encourage our clients to go find operators that are really, really good at their market. If they're multifamily people, great. If they're mobile home community people, great. Like find somebody that is excellent. And the thing I think about that I've seen in mobile homes and the space that you guys are in is there's so much opportunity to drive value. When you get the operations figured out from top to bottom, forcing that appreciation, there's opportunity like there is in no other asset class. And I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to you, but we just see the multifamily probably next on the list. Commercial, retail, industrial, there's some opportunities there, but it's really those like operation heavy,
Those
management
niches.
structures, right? That when I can get in there and make things go efficiently and effectively, like watch out, the value is tremendous. So Yes.
Well, what else?
Thanks for letting me run off on a tangent there. But
Yeah, no, thank you. And thanks for talking about manufactured housing communities,
hmm
which we love, by the way. And I
hmm
think to kind of dovetail off something you said, it's the lack of professional management. A lot of operators out there are looking to go to scale, but they're really, unless you're vertically integrated, like we are here at Crystal View, and we have a third-party affiliate that's really dialed into the day-to-day and has built the systems and the infrastructure and the back office over the past 2 decades. If you don't have that, it's a very challenging, it's a very nuanced asset class. So when
Yep.
we're buying these assets, they're ripe for us to come in there and really operate more efficiently. And to your point, I'll tell you, when you are successful in driving value and driving NOI, you
hmm
force that appreciation. What we call it here is you control your own destiny.
Yep.
Back to what you said about being a stock picker. I mean, look, if that's your core competency, you could underwrite a company quickly, you could look at the balance sheet, and you understand what it hinges upon, and you can allocate capital, then more power to you. But you're still at the whims of the public market and
Yep.
sediment. I mean, look at the market today, huge sell-off because jobs are strong. I mean, you can't control that stuff,
Yep.
but you can control your rents to a certain extent.
hmm
You can control how well you are on your operations, and therefore you can control your value a lot
Yep.
better than you can in the public markets.
Right. And the nice thing too about your space is, the manufactured homes are kind of recession proof. People will move up out of apartments into them and, out of houses into them as well. And so it's like, things are moving up or down and you just have, a lot of security there. And I'll even argue it is so hard to underwrite, a publicly traded stock. Even though I've got some financial data, so does everybody else. And it's
Yeah,
like,
it's
it's really
efficient.
challenging, right? Yes, it is. It's a very
It's a
efficient
very
market.
efficient
Yep.
market, and this is
Yep.
a very inefficient market.
Yes. The thing about that we see, when we look for opportunities, I love a mom and pop operator, like I love those folks. Like they've done a great job operating this thing. They've done it for 20, 30 years. They've experienced all the cash flow. They've enjoyed it, but they don't have the systems and the processes and the efficiencies. And, I remember doing things like we called it easy pay and you could pay every 2 weeks when you got paid. Well, the cool thing about that is when you got set up on easy pay, you just got charged every 2 weeks, which is 26 payments, which is 13 months of rent. And they loved it because they didn't have to like plan out their cash flow. But again, you start setting up a simple thing like that and it makes a tremendous impact in the NOI. And then it's just controlling your own destiny like you're talking about.
Yeah, there's all kinds of levers, and we've learned it through trial and tribulation. Sometimes you gotta go through the school of hard knocks to learn these systems and these
hmm
procedures. There's no real manual out there on this stuff.
Yep. Yep.
But in closing, if you don't mind, I
hmm
do have a question for you. Kind of
Sure.
go back. What advice would you give? And I think this will help our audience who are aspiring
hmm
entrepreneurs. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self? Not
Yep.
not only philosophically, but how would you build a fortress balance sheet that could
hmm
compound wealth over decades to come if you were to recreate in today's environment, in the era of AI, with what you know now? How would you rebuild this machine, and what kind of mindset would you put on it to
Yeah.
thrive and grow and to do all the things you want to do in life?
I didn't like this answer when I first started, but all business starts, if I'm thinking of it from an entrepreneur point of view, it starts with revenue. And I have to go out there and sell something to generate some revenue. So I can be a great technician, but if I don't know how to like go hustle and get somebody excited about the opportunity in front of me, that's pretty challenging. So driving revenue is like step number one to being a good business owner. Whether we like it or not, it's kind of the name of the game. The next
Sure.
thing that we like to look at is, and I had a mentor tell me this, and I think there's just so much wisdom in it. It's my business will grow at the rate I make decisions. Now, what I didn't say was my business will grow at the rate I make right decisions. There's going to be opportunities in front of me, and I've got to make a decision, and I'm going to do the best I can. But if that decision pans out, fantastic. Like you were talking about the operations, right? The way you figure out operations is you try something. And if it works, great, you do more of it. If it doesn't work, you try something else and you make
Yep.
another decision. And so the speed at which you can make decisions is just awfully important. It accelerates the learning curve and it pushes you down the road so much quicker. Those are a couple like key points. And then I think the last thing is most people aren't, they want to drive through breakthrough. I want to be a millionaire today. I want to put in minimal effort. I'm going to set up a drop shipping business and, I don't have to do any work and I'm going to make $1 million a year. I don't know if those really exist. There might be some super genius out there that can figure that stuff out, but we don't have any clients that are doing those things. The clients that we have that have made money, even the young guys and gals, is they show up every day. They just put in the work, even when they don't want to, even when they don't feel like it. And there's just something I think an easy concept to relate to is going to the gym. If I go to the gym one day, I don't come out the next day and be like, hey, look, got a six pack, amazing. Where I get a six pack is I show up and go to the gym every day for 5 years, and I get my nutrition dialed in, and I get my sleep dialed in, and I do all of the little things that are just not very sexy, but I do them long enough that I get tremendous results that people are like, wow, look at you. A mentor of mine also said, I'm 25 years into my overnight success. It's like, so true,
Yeah.
I had to put in 25 years of work and then it all like popped off and went amazingly well. And people started recognizing like, oh, hey, there's something figured out over here. So I think that's the hard part is you just got to keep putting in the work over a long period of time. And I think Dave Ramsey, I love, hate Dave. I think more of America needs to listen to Dave. Dave doesn't, I don't know if I totally agree with all of his entrepreneur comments, but, what Dave's got a saying that says something to the effect of like, do what people won't do so you can do what people can't do, or something along those lines. I'm screwing that up, but I'm like, yes, there's so much truth to that. Like, just keep putting in the work and eventually you'll get to a spot where nobody else can get to.
It's so true. You have to become back to the gym or back to becoming a millionaire, whatever it is that you want to do. You have to become that person first. It's not like you're going to get the thing without becoming the person. And it's not, it's like a diet. If you want a life of health and vitality, do you really go on some crazy diet and then fall off of it? No, you go on a lifestyle change that never changes.
Yep.
You have to become that person that's conducive to the success that you want to achieve in life. And it sounds like that's exactly what you would tell your 20-year-old self if you could.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And, I love all the technology stuff, but I think there's just some core principles. Like, you're still going to have to put in the work. It might make it more efficient, might make it more effective, might open some new doors for you, but it's still going to look a lot like work.
There's no substitute for hard work, is there? And showing up.
There isn't. Yeah. We deal with lots of multimillionaires, and all of them have put in an exceptional amount of work, well beyond what most people are willing to do.
Yeah. And it's amazing. It seems like over time, it's dissipating the people that are willing to put in that work. So if somebody's out there listening, if you are, I think you have one heck of an advantage over your peers and competitors if you're willing to just show up every day and put in the work and have a positive mental attitude. That what's possible for you is amazing. So just keep putting in the work.
Thanks so much,
Well,
Matt.
yeah, thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. This is amazing. I want to continue our conversation around the captive and some of these other things, which is really exciting to me. But I appreciate you coming on and inspiring us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Lonergan, Value Add Strategy Podcast.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Matt. I appreciate all the good work you're doing. You're helping people build wealth that would be almost impossible to do on their own. So keep up the good work.
I appreciate you saying that. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.